right about time to bring you up to speed with what's happening globally in Nigeria. We begin with Trump orders end to funding gender transitions for minors. At least 7 killed in stampede at India's Mahakumbh festival. Trump pushes boundaries of presidential power. Kim inspects nuclear site, undergoes stronger arsenal buildup, and U.S. Senate blocks bill to sanction ICC over Israel warrants. Stay with me for these and more stories. Donald Trump, United States President, has signed an executive order to suspend the funding and promotion of gender transitions for LGBTQ youth. On Tuesday, in his order signed, Trump said the federal government will no longer fund, sponsor, promote, assist, or support gender transitions, also referred to as gender-affirming care, for those aged below 19. The Department of Health and Human Services, under the order, must take all appropriate actions to hold gender-affirming care under Medicare, Medicaid, and the Affordable Care Act, and publish a review of best practices for promoting the health of youth with gender dysphoria and other identity-based confusion within 90 days. Trump's order also directs agencies to end their dependence on guidance from the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, WPATH, which he accused of peddling junk science. Trump's order covers a range of treatments and procedures for young people suffering from gender dysphoria, which describes the distress felt by people whose biological sex does not match their gender identity, including puberty blockers, cross-sex hormone therapy, and surgery. The medical treatment of transgender youth has been a controversial and politically divisive issue in the United States, where those calling for greater inclusion of LGBTQ youth have clashed with those stating concern that minors are not mature enough to take or make decisions about potentially life-altering procedures. In recent years, the number of young people diagnosed with gender dysphoria in the United States has increased several-fold, though only a relatively small minority of those have undergone medical interventions, according to various analyses. An analysis by health technology company Komodo Health found that 282 minors with a prior diagnosis of gender dysphoria underwent mastectomies in 2021. Closely 4,230 minors received cross-sex hormones and less than 1,400 received puberty blockers that year, according to the analysis. At least 26 U.S. states have passed laws or policies limiting minors' access to gender-affirming care. 61% of Americans said they oppose laws barring psychological support, hormonal treatment, and medical surgeries for minors, compared with 36% in favor in a Gallup poll last year. GLAAD, one of the biggest LGBTQ rights organizations in the United States, blasted Trump's order, describing its rhetoric as appallingly inaccurate, incoherent, and extreme. Kelly Robinson, president of the Human Rights Campaign, described the order as a brazen attempt to put politicians in between people and their doctors, preventing them from accessing evidence-based healthcare supported by every major medical association in the country. Over 70 people and possibly as many as 15 have been killed and several others wounded in a crowd crush at the world's biggest religious festival in northern India, according to reports. Witnesses counted several bodies and a doctor at the festival site in the city of Prayagraj in Uttar Pradesh said, according to report, that 15 people were killed in the crush near a riverbank early on Wednesday morning. The final death toll is yet to be confirmed, and relatives of wounded victims were anxiously waiting for news outside a huge tent serving as a purpose-built hospital for the festival, approximately a kilometer half a mile from the accident site. Officials said a rapid action force, RAF, a special unit called Enduring Crisis, had been deployed to the area to bring the situation under control, and rescue efforts were underway. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke to Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath and gave directions for normalization of the situation and relief, according to reports. The Mahakumbh Mela, a greater picture festival, is the single biggest milestone on the Hindu religious calendar, and up to 400 million pilgrims were anticipated to visit, before the festival's final day on February 26th. The festival is being held on a 10,000-acre site that's 4,046 hectares, where makeshift tents have been constructed to accommodate pilgrims. Wednesday marks one of the holiest days in the six-week festival, with holy men due to lead pilgrims in a procession of sin cleansing bathing at the confluence of Ganges and Yamuna rivers in Prayagraj. Officials with loud hailers had urged pilgrims to keep away from the water as the crush started in the early hours of Wednesday morning. Held every 12 years in 4 locations, Prayagraj, Haridwar, Nashik and Ujjain, Hindus believe the festival is an opportunity for them to wash their sins away as they gather on the banks of sacred rivers to take part in a day of ritual bathing. Deadly crowd crushes regularly happen at Indian religious festivals, and the Mahakumbh, often called simply the Kumbh, boasts a grim track record for deadly accidents. Over 400 people died on a single day of the festival in 1954 after being trampled or drowned, and what remains one of the deadliest incidents of its kind. In 2013, another 36 people were crushed to death the last time the festival was staged in Prayag. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's newest attempt to wield huge and questionable executive power, this time by temporarily suspending federal aid, triggered nationwide confusion and fear, with programs including Meals on Wheels and low-income housing assistance suddenly in limbo. The methodical approach that characterized the intense opening week of Trump's presidency yielded to chaos, reminiscent of the uproar that characterized his first term and helped him lose the 2020 election. But most profoundly, the drama set off a momentous legal war over the scope of presidential authority, which will shape the new administration of the separation of powers and is almost certain to land in the Supreme Court. Trump's brand as a bombastic disruptor reflects the disdain many Americans have for Washington establishment, and he can fairly argue he has a mandate for change after an impressive election victory. Democratic claims that he's bent on becoming a dictator have often been alarmist. But the spending freeze, along with other significant steps early in this presidency, including the firing of Justice Department prosecutors and a bid to repeal birthright citizenship, also reflects Trump's view that the presidency has almost unlimited power and he can simply decide what is legal and what isn't. On Tuesday, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said, according to a report, that the White House counsel's office believes that this is within the president's power to do it, and therefore he's doing it. So it only took a week and a day for Trump's second presidency, rooted in his desire for total control, to present a grave challenge to the Constitution. According to reports on Wednesday, Kim Jong-un, North Korean leader, has inspected a facility that produces nuclear material and called for the boosting the country's nuclear capability as increased pressure on the United States following the inauguration of President Donald Trump. Kim's visit suggests a continued emphasis on expansion of North Korea's nuclear arsenal, though Trump has said he's willing to talk to Kim again to revive diplomacy. Many analysts view North Korean weapon steps as part of a plan to win diplomatic talks with Washington that could result in aid and political concessions. Reports said Kim visited the nuclear material production base and the Nuclear Weapons Institute. It didn't say where these facilities are located, but North Korean photos of Kim's visits indicated that he likely visited a uranium enrichment facility that he went to last September. That visit was North Korea's first disclosure of a uranium enrichment facility since it showed one to visiting American scholars in 2010. During the newest visit, Kim praised the scientists and others for producing weapons-grade nuclear materials and in strengthening the nuclear shield of the country. On Sunday, North Korea said it tested a cruise missile system, its third known weapons display this year, and vowed the toughest response to what it called the escalation of U.S.-South Korean military drills. North Korea views U.S. military training with South Korea as invasion rehearsals, though Washington and Seoul have repeatedly said their drills are defensive in nature. In recent years, the United States and South Korea have expanded their military exercises in response to North Korea's advancing nuclear program. The start of Trump's second term raises prospects for the revival of diplomacy between the United States and North Korea, as Trump met Kim 3 times during his first term. The Trump-Kim diplomacy in 2018 to 2019 fell apart due to wrangling over U.S.-led economic sanctions on North Korea. On Thursday, Trump called Kim a smart guy and not a religious zealot. Asked whether he will reach out to Kim again, Trump replied, "I will." Several experts say Kim likely thinks he has greater bargaining power than in his earlier round of diplomacy with Trump because of his country's enlarged nuclear arsenal and deepening military ties with Russia. On Israel-Gaza war, Democrats in the United States Senate have blocked the passage of a bill that would sanction the International Criminal Court (ICC) over its issuance of arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for alleged war crimes in Gaza. Tuesday's vote saw the bill gain 54 votes in favor and 45 opposed, falling short of the 60 votes required to advance to a final vote. United Nations experts, European Union officials, and the present and former presidents of the ICC's management body have all come out against the bill, cautioning it will set a dangerous precedent at a time of added importance for the international legal order. But several of the Democrats who voted against the measure still accuse the court of taking unfair actions against Israel by issuing warrants against Netanyahu and Gallant. The court simultaneously issued a warrant for Hamas commander Mohammed Deif for his role in the attack on October 7, 2023 against southern Israel. Chuck Schumer, the Democratic Party leader in the Republican-controlled Senate, speaking before the vote, said the sanctions bill is one I largely support and would like to see become law. He called for Republicans to go back to the negotiating table to tweak the language in the legislation. Senate Majority Leader John Thune, a Republican speaking on the Senate floor in support of the bill, said the targeting of a close U.S. ally should concern us all. Senator John Fetterman was the sole Democrat to vote in favor of the legislation. He swiftly earned praise from the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, the vastly influential pro-Israel lobby. In a statement, the group thanked Fetterman for his principled pro-Israel leadership and for standing with Israel against the ICC's baseless attacks. In the past, President Donald Trump took a hard line against the ICC, imposing sanctions on its official in 2020 over concerns that the court was probing U.S. military actions abroad. The administration of former President Joe Biden later revoked that order, but Trump reversed Biden's decision upon taking office just last week. His move has so far been symbolic, as the reversal did not automatically reimpose the sanctions. More stories now, and in Africa, Corneille Nangaa, DRC's ex-election chief, now rebel leader. Corneille Nangaa planted the controversial vote that gave power to the DRC's present president back in 2018. Now, he is the leader of a coalition of Congolese politicians and rebel groups fighting to overthrow him. Among the groups, he has partnered with other Rwandan-backed insurgents. These Tutsi-led groups have fought a string of rebellions in the east during the last 20 years against the DRC's government. They have seized a number of border towns in the region and recently marched into Goma following a surprise offensive that has driven thousands from their homes. But beyond capturing territory, Nangaa says he is aiming to recreate the state. The 54-year-old has claimed he has numerous alliances without giving further details. A rising number of armed factions are siding with Nangaa's AFC, which deems the M23 rebels to be their military wing, according to United Nations experts. The UN, France, the UK and US have all urged Rwanda to pull out forces from Congo. Nangaa has not refuted Rwandan backing. He said Kinshasa also had the support of Burundi's military, raising fears about the violence becoming more widespread. Meanwhile, Rwanda has earlier rejected accusations it has connections with the rebels, while also justifying the actions as self-defense. Please stay tuned, and when we come back, I'll bring you more stories from Nigeria. Don't go anywhere. You're welcome back and thanks for staying with us. We continue with stories from Nigeria. Still on the controversial telecom tariff hike, subscribers sue over 50% telecom hike as NCC talks toll. Nigerians are mounting a resolute challenge to the contentious 50% surge in call and data tariffs, with telecom subscribers and advocacy groups intensifying the matter to the courts following unsuccessful effort to engage the Nigerian Communications Commission (NCC). On Wednesday, the National Association of Telecommunications Subscribers declared its intention to initiate legal proceedings against the telecom regulator, inciting the NCC's failure to address its demand for a decrease of the tariff hike to a more acceptable 10%. Announced last week Monday, the tariff hike, marking the first adjustment in over a decade, has triggered broad concerns from critics like the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project (SARAP) and the Nigeria Labour Congress (NLC). These groups, including NATCOMS, contend that the addition worsens already challenging economic conditions, disproportionately affecting low-income households and small businesses struggling to navigate rising inflation and a volatile economic climate. The subscriber group, which represents 157 million Nigerians who depend on affordable telecom services, on Friday initiated talks via correspondence, requesting the NCC reconsider its stance within 3 working days. The regulator failed to do so. NATCOM's president, Adeolu Ogunbajo, speaking on Tuesday, disclosed the NCC's inaction to respond to its request, which has left consumers increasingly disillusioned by the rising cost of telecom services. Ogunbajo said the letter sent to NCC underlined the burden that a 50% increase places on subscribers, especially those in lower income brackets who rely on affordable communication services for their daily activities. Still on the news, El-Rufai criticizes APC for weak leadership, poor democracy. Nasir El-Rufai, ex-Kaduna State Governor, has blasted the ruling All Progressives Congress (APC), accusing the party of drifting from its founding ideals and adopting poor leadership. While addressing the national conference in Abuja on boosting democracy in Nigeria, El-Rufai tagged the state of governance and opposition in the country as a national emergency. He shared the report on his X handle on Tuesday, voicing concern over the absence of internal democracy and active party structures within the APC. The former governor criticized the quality of leadership emerging for political parties, blaming it on unqualified delegates. He remarked, "You cannot afford to have illiterate, semi-illiterate, and cunning people as your leaders. This is why we end up with poor leadership we have today." El-Rufai urged political parties to raise standards for candidates and delegates, stressing that the Constitution's minimum requirement of a secondary school certificate should not be enough for nominations, while lamenting that the APC's founding aims of fighting corruption, rebuilding the economy, and enhancing security have been abandoned. Citing a poll that shows 75% of registered voters might abstain from the 2027 elections, El-Rufai cautioned of a potential political turmoil. The Special Advisor on Public Communications and Media, Daniel Bwala, while reacting to El-Rufai's post, questioned the former governor's stance, asking if he would have held the same position had he remained in the government or the cabinet. And finally on the news, INEC says EU others not funding Nigeria elections. The funding of electoral activities still remains the sovereign responsibility of the Nigerian government, the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) has said. Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, the INEC chairman, who spoke on Tuesday when he received the European Union Ambassador to Nigeria and ECOWAS, Gato Mignot, explained that the Commission does not receive direct funding from donor agencies. Professor Yakubu also added that INEC does not have an account into which donor funds were housed. He noted the EU's partnership with INEC since the restoration of democracy in Nigeria in 1999 and said it has aided to consolidate the electoral and democratic process in Nigeria. Professor Yakubu stated since the 2023 general election, the Commission has received reports from several of the 206 national and foreign groups and international organizations accredited to observe the elections. According to him, the European Union Election Observation Mission (EUCOM) made a total of 23 recommendations, of which 8 require action by the Commission and 15 by the executive, judiciary and legislative arms of government, as well as other stakeholders such as civil society organizations, the media, faith-based organizations and political parties. He stated that there has been substantial improvement in Nigeria's electoral process over the last 6 electoral cycles, but admitted that there is still a lot of work that lies ahead. Professor Yakubu pleaded for the EU's continuous support and collaboration with the INEC as we approach the 3rd phase of the European Union support to democratic governance in Nigeria. He told the ambassador that INEC worked very closely with his predecessors and looked forward to sustaining the same relationship with him to boost Nigeria's electoral democracy. Ambassador McNaught had told the INEC chairman that election is not the only aspect of democracy, stating that without a credible electoral system enjoying the trust of the citizens and the stakeholders, there can't be a good democracy. To refresh our memories, Trump orders end to funding gender transitions for minors. At least 7 killed in stampede at India's Mahakumbh festival. Trump pushes boundaries of presidential power. Kim inspects nuclear site, urges stronger arsenal build-up, and U.S. Senate blocks bill to sanction ICC over Israel warrant. And that's all in the news. Thanks for watching. I am Lois Duraki.